Hey guys, and welcome back to the Boxing Wrap. Been a bit of a few weeks break, but nonetheless, here we are again. I'm delighted to be joined by Kenny. Kenny, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm fine, mate. Just living the dream, living the dream. Looking forward to things getting back to some kind of normality. And I emphasize some kind of normality because, as you know, it's not going to be normal for a long time. So, just enjoying the fact
Absolutely.
that there is sport on TV again.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we spoke about before we started, not too long before boxing's back, one fight that should have happened today involving heavyweight is Gerald Miller, but obviously it came out last week that he's failed yet again another drugs test. What's your thoughts on that, first of all?
Yeah. So as we were talking about before, again, surprised and not surprised. Not surprised in the fact um, that he's, I think he was caught because he was in. I think was he not a kickboxer before? I think I,
Yeah, I
I
believe
think
so.
this is multiple times now, right? Um, and and as I was saying earlier, I think that this is now to have thrown away an opportunity against to fight for three world titles and a crazy amount of money to have obviously done those drugs um, and then get caught again is just should we have been surprised really, you know as I was saying before, it's I can only imagine he's got some kind of dependency on these drugs. I mean, I don't mean like an addiction like you would on like heroin or crystal meth or something like that, but just he must just feel that he has to do it, right? um and I mean, as I was saying before, uh sportsmen, and I don't want to tar all sportsmen, especially not all boxers, with this brush, is these these folk are not the uh most intelligent people in the whole world, right? When I look for intellectual inspiration, I do not look at sportsmen for it, right? I look elsewhere. So and obviously, I said I'd be careful not to tar everyone with that brush, but I mean they do what they do in that sport, and what they do, and outside that, a lot of these guys got very little else. So it's not surprising in that way, and it's just going to be interesting to see what happens to Jarrell Miller, because effectively nothing happened to him the first time round, right?
No, and again, just reading up on it, he's under a temporary suspension by the Nevada State Commission. But from as I understand it, from my limited knowledge, that doesn't stop him, say, flying to New York and boxing. It's just in that area of America. And I know it's been spoke about before, but really there needs to be some sort of universal uh, something in place for if you do fail a test, no matter what for, there needs to be some sort of universal board or like an FA but in boxing where they can impose bans worldwide because as I say, there's nothing stopping him tomorrow and go and box in a different state, which I just think is absurd.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how much? I think the question's now got to come. How much do we actually give a shit about this? And I don't mean we. I mean governing bodies, athletic commissions. How much do we actually care about this? About doping in boxing, right? Because the, you know you could ban Miller for life or whatever, right? And that's going to stop Jarrell Miller. It's not going to stop anyone else. So I don't know whether this is viable, but why don't they sit Jarrell Miller down and say, look, okay, you're either getting a life ban or you're getting a year's ban. if you get a year's ban, you tell us where you got the drugs from, who's telling you to take them, etc., etc., etc. And I see, whenever this subject comes up, they have interviews, even with the likes of Eddie Hearn, like, yeah, boxing, it's rife with it. It's rife with it in America. And it's like, well, okay, everyone knows it, but nobody's saying anything. And, you don't want to go down and be a snitch. But if we really want this to stop, you can't just ban fighters. You're going to have to find out where it's coming from, and who these people are, because Jarrell Miller's, I'd be very surprised if he is just doing this off his own back, right?
Yeah, and I think that again comes back to maybe the intelligence of boxers. I don't think they would have the first idea what to take or what does what. So yeah, it must be. I don't know if it's a sort of sports scientist or whoever. It's got to be someone like that. I would have thought that's given these guys this information to take this.
Yeah. I mean, has anybody looked at the guy seriously and thought, how is this guy so big? Right? Is he really taking in 8,000 calories a day and burning, that many off to build the kind of muscle that he's building? I'm not saying that that's the case, but I mean, it's obviously obvious after the fact, but I mean, the guy's huge.
Yeah. There's definitely more to come out of this, I think. For what it's worth, the thing that he was banned for this time, or what he was pulled up for, was something called GW1516, which aids endurance.
Yes, yeah. And these are heavy duty things. This isn't, oh, it was a byproduct of something that was in my protein drink, right? This is proper stuff. I mean, the stuff he got the stuff he got caught with, when he failed his first drugs test against, before he was to fight Anthony Joshua. I mean, they had EPO in there, and that was Lance Armstrong's drug of choice. And this was, he had EPO, GW1516, he had HGH. I mean, these are the let's not arse around kind of steroids, right? These are proper.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not creatine, or something, that once upon a time was on the kind of edge of being, is this a steroid or is it not, or is it should we be taking this? Or this is, fine well, you shouldn't be taking this stuff.
Yeah, and I suppose what does happen we'll learn in the next few weeks, but I think it will go one of two ways. They'll either make an example of him and ban him for life, hoping that it will detract other people from taking it, or he'll just get a slap on the wrist like he did the first time, and he'll be boxing again by the end of the year.
Yeah, well, I don't know what they can do, because he never officially got banned for the first failed test. So it's not as if they could say, well, you had a year's ban the first time, so we'll hit you with a lifetime ban this time. They would kind of have to look at this as a first offense, because nobody actually banned him the first time. I think the WBA or the WBO, I can't remember, did one of them not take them out of his rankings or something, or said that they wouldn't let him fight for their, under their sanction for 6 months or something.
Yeah, and again, because there's no authority really for this kind of thing, I suppose deep down he knows that there's a great chance that he can not get away with it to a certain extent, where he'll be boxing again relatively soon.
Well, I think I think they've got to ban him for life, because and obviously it's just my opinion, but I can only imagine that he has a dependency on these, because after being caught and exposed to the world the first time, he knows he's going to get drugs tested going forward, right? So how on earth he could be doing this again and expect not to get caught? But it's different if anyone or if any of yourself, if you've had a dependency on something, your ability to think rationally kind of goes out of the window, right?
Yeah.
You just think it'll be okay, you know, blah blah blah. Like you know, like if you've ever thought, like even not even with a dependency, if you're drinking and you've got work the next day, right? You know, you're out having a few pints and you think, right, I need to go home at 9 because I need to get, you know, I can't be drunk the next day when I'm driving to work, and then oh, you know, it's 10 o'clock, and then I'll just have one more, and then it gets to 11. You're like, oh, if I get to bed by midnight, you know, you get home, you get up at 7 a.m. the next day and drive to work, and you probably shouldn't be driving to work, right?
Yeah.
But that's the way that's the way you're kind of thinking when you're obviously alcohol and drugs is different things, but that's the way your mind works when you're taking substances, right? Or you're, you know, you're otherwise out with your normal self.
Yeah. Yeah. But of course, we don't know what's going to happen with him. But I I think it will be interesting, and as you said, I think he does deserve to be banned for life, and I think his team should be looked at as well, as we spoke about earlier. He's got his drugs off, and anyone involved in it should face the same ban as him, I think.
Yeah, you can't be taking in a sport like boxing where, you know, it's you're you're actually doing damage to people. You can't be taking substances that are going to get either make you stronger or give you more, or basically give you an advantage over your opponent, right? Because you know, going into a fight anyway, especially unless you're fighting someone who's on your level, you've already got advantages over your opponent, right? So and you can the chat, you know, if you're hammered up with steroids and you're unbelievably strong, much stronger than you would be if you weren't, you can kill someone. And that's,
Yeah,
you know, that's you could even look at this in a criminal prosecutions way, right? Really, you could make an
yeah,
argument for that.
yeah. I mean, quite a few former and current boxers have said the exact same thing. Anthony Croator, people like Dave Caldwell. It was interesting because I was watching an interview with Johnny Nelson, and he mentioned the fact that he boxed three drugs each. He drew against one and beat two. And he said, as a boxer, you know if your opponent's on drugs. He said one of the fights, he went back to the corner and told Brendan Ingle, this one's on gear. So as you say, it's a criminal matter in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, but I mean, they get away with it in sport. I mean, there's some things that happen on a football pitch that theoretically are criminal matters, but because it's on the football pitch, they get away with it, right? So, I mean, I don't expect that would ever happen, but I'm just, I'm not, I don't think I'm in favor of. I believe every drugs case has to be treated
Yeah,
on its own merits, because you know you do have people who fail for benign substances that are on the anti-doping list, and they're, you know, but they're just there because they contain something, micro traces of something else. And then you've got human growth hormone and EPO, and you know the heavy duty stuff that you know, there's no mistake. You know, this isn't something that's in wild boar meat, right? That you may have eaten in a steak or something, you know.
yeah, absolutely. We'll have to wait and see what happens with that.
But there needs to be some discouragement from you. I personally, I don't want to see Jarrell Miller in a boxing ring ever again. Especially after he sat in press conferences and basically told the whole world, oh, Anthony Joshua's taking steroids and drugs and all this rest of this stuff, which, don't get me wrong, he may very well be, right? I'm not saying that if he does or if he doesn't, but to to stand up on your high horse and accuse other people of doing things and then get caught yourself twice. I mean, people have just got to look at this guy and say he's got no credibility. We can't trust him to do anything. He's 31 now. If we ban him for 4 or 5 years, even if he comes back and he's 35, he'll need about 2 years of fights before he gets anywhere near match fit. And then, he's not realistically at that time, he's not going to do anything. And that's if he doesn't get caught doping again. So I would just get rid of the guy. Just get rid of him.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Just while we're on the heavyweight theme, have you seen the news that come out about Dylan Whyte and Jimmy Tibbs yesterday and Mark Tibbs?
Yeah, I heard. I mean, I haven't. I say I've been pretty busy the last month, but I had seen today that they've split. Is that correct?
Yeah. From both of them has come out. It's quite amicable, and I think it's mainly down to, in the statement it said that Tibbs has got a young family and he's just opened his new gym and he understandably wants to stay in the UK, where Dylan Whyte is out in Portugal.
Yeah. Okay.
But it'd be interesting to see who he trains with.
I know. Do you think he'll go for one of these? Do you think he'll go for one of these? Go for a Freddie Roach or something? That would be funny.
I think it could be Shane McGuigan. I think that's who he could go with.
Yeah. Okay. Well, he would certainly. I mean, he could certainly. He's making enough money nowadays, so he could get the best trainers, and depending on who he views they are.
Yeah, and the only reason I say that was because they've got quite a good relationship. I don't know if you remember when Dylan first turned pro, and the McGuigans had their shows on ITV.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, Shane McGuigan was involved with him then, coaching wise, and he was under a promotion contract under the McGuigans before he joined Matchroom.
Oh, okay. No, I did not know that. I mean, that must have been, how many years ago was that?
Oh, it's got to be 5 or 6. It was when Frampton had those 2 years on ITV. So, yeah, it's got to be 5, 6 years ago.
Okay. So no, I didn't know he was with the McGuigans originally, but yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how. But that's actually strange though, because I mean, is it the best time to change trainer? He's got to fight Alexander Povetkin in in a month or so.
Yeah, and they seem to work quite well. I don't think it was great when he was with Jonathan Banks, but him and Tibbs seem to have quite a good fighter-trainer relationship.
Well, I mean, the only thing is, so he's a month out from a fight against. Now, Alexander Povetkin's a very dangerous guy, and that's a big Whyte. Now, ordinarily, I'd think Whyte would win that fight, but if say it is Shane McGuigan and they come in and they're trying to implement if Dylan Whyte's in between two kind of fight styles or two methods of thought, that might be a bit tricky for Dylan Whyte. Might be more trickier in that fight than it probably ought to be. So it'll be interesting to see what goes on there. Is Dylan Whyte still out in Portugal now, even though he's only maybe 6 weeks away from fighting?
Yeah, he's still there now, but I don't know who he's training with. I know he's with a few other fighters, but in regards to a proper boxing coach, I don't know what his situation is out there.
Or maybe this will only really, maybe he'll continue to do the same kind of stuff as he's doing and then pick up with another, well, certainly go full on with another trainer after the Povetkin fight.
Yeah.
Because I really don't think it would be good to try and change things for Dylan Whyte right now.
No. The timing of it is particularly concerning for what you would say is the hardest fight of his career, albeit Povetkin's aging and not at his best.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, I would say the hardest fight of his career. Well, see, it depends. I mean, I mean, the first Derek Chisora fight was pretty difficult for Dylan White. Obviously, outside Joshua, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I mean, the first Chisora fight is actually. I mean, that Dylan White could have easily lost that fight, and that actually remains one of my favorite fights, probably my most favorite fight, heavyweights anyway, in the sort of modern era of boxing.
Yeah, I
Um,
suppose you could say it was neck and neck with Joseph Parker towards the end of the fight as well.
yeah, yeah, it was. But the White Chisora first fight, man, these guys were, especially from about the second half of the fight onwards, they were trying to kill each other in there. Every single punch was pretty much aimed at trying to have a knockout.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of Chisora, I don't know if he's still hoping to get that fight with Usyk. I think it's gone a bit quiet on that with
Yeah, it
the whole
has.
situation.
I was going to say I've heard nothing on that, and I saw some stuff a few weeks ago about Usyk could possibly curtail the Fury Joshua fight because of mandatories, and I think even Sky Sports had that posted at some point. So and I was sitting at that thinking, well, or even if the Fury and Joshua fight does happen, is Usyk gonna come in between them?
Yeah, and speaking of mandatories with heavyweight fighters, I don't know how true these rumblings are, but there's certainly rumblings that Dylan White himself could be fighting Tyson Fury at the end of this year instead of the Wilder third fight.
Well, this is the tricky thing right now because both guys have got mandatories, chomping at their heels to fight them. Joshua's got two of them, and I think as much as I want to see the Joshua Fury fight, I think they should leave it until we can get a stadium full of people, which hopefully would be next year. Because Fury should really, if you're talking what's fair, and Fury is going to have the third fight with Wilder, we know that, and then he should fight Dillian White mandatory.
Yeah,
So that's two fights for Fury from now. And then if you look at Joshua, he's got two mandatories and Pulev and Usyk. Now, and
yeah,
then they should fight sometime. Fury Joshua should fight sometime next year, provided they're both still the champions, because that is by no way, a foregone conclusion, because those are two very dangerous fights each. Although I think Fury beats Wilder easily, and I think Joshua beats Pulev easily. I think it's their next fights that are the really dangerous fights: Joshua, Usyk, and Fury White.
yeah, absolutely. And I believe I saw on Sky Sports, I think it was yesterday, that there could be a third mandatory on AJ, which is Robert Helenius.
Oh my God, I don't want to see that. Is
No,
that so? That must be the WBA, is it?
yeah, yes, yeah, so on.
Oh, I mean, surely Hellenius would take a few quid, surely.
Yeah, yeah. But although you can't write heavyweights off, of course you can't. I don't think he's got a chance. Whoever's the champion, Helenius.
No, I mean, like Hellenius. Not that I followed his career that much, but it just seems that win over Kaunaki has just seems to have propelled him into a bit of notoriety now.
Yeah, yeah. And I believe, I think I read as well, that he could be fighting Charles Martin Helenius for a
Well,
WBA eliminator.
well, that would be a good thing. You know, that would be a half decent thing to see. But they can't be. I mean, if Joshua was to get past, if those Fury and Joshua, those fights go the way that I just said they go, and then the WBA turn around and say, no, you've got to fight our mandatory now rather than fighting Fury. That's insane.
Yeah, yeah,
But then they get paid sanctioning fees, so surely they'll just, they're going to get paid much more to sanction a fight against Fury than they will against Hellenius. I don't want to see Joshua v Hellenius.
no, no. So we're just under a month away from proper boxing, I would call it. I know Frank's got his little conference shows coming up soon, but fight camp, have you seen all the latest confirmed fights? I know you've been pretty busy.
Yeah. So I was looking at this the other day. I think the first and the last fights first and last cards look most appealing to me, because I'm quite keen to see Eggington Cheeseman, egg versus cheese. So, and then obviously the last one, the Povetkin card's actually pretty good. Like, when you consider where we are right now in the terms, you've got Dillian Whyte versus Povetkin. You've got Katie Taylor versus Delphine Persoon, which is a fight I'm really looking forward to seeing, because the first fight was quite controversial and it was a really good fight, the first fight. Interested to see Bacoli fighting Kuzman as well. So I think obviously the first three cards are just kind of getting you eased back into things, and getting you the taste for it, and then they're going to end up with this card on, I think it's around the 22nd of August.
Yeah, and that's going to be pay-per-view, that one, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Now, I mean, I've always got to be in my bonnet about how many things go on pay-per-view, but the Dillian Whyte Povetkin was always going to be pay-per-view, so I can't gripe about that too much. But it's been so long since I've seen any kind of half-decent boxing that I'm sure I'm not going to care too much about it. Even the pay-per-view fights I look at and I think, oh, I can't believe this is pay-per-view. I'm not going to pay for this. And I speak to people at work and stuff. I was like, I'm not paying for this. I'm not paying for this. I'm not paying for this. I get to Saturday night and I'm sitting there and I'm like, right, what's on? This, that, and the next thing. Okay, there's absolutely nothing on, or my team's just been stuffed into football, and I'm just like, right, I'm paying for this box and I'm watching it. That's how you kind of know. That's how you know you actually really are very interested in the sport, right? When you try and take moral high ground for the weeks leading up to it, I'm not paying for this. I'm not paying for this. I'm not paying for this, and then you end up paying for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back on just having a little browse of the Matchroom fight camps, as you say, the first and fourth one stand out. Interesting to see that they got Jason Wellborn fighting Felix Cass, which could be a half decent domestic scrap on the third show.
Do you see on the third show that is?
Yes. I think it's Yeah, and going back
okay,
to
yeah. So yeah. And you've got actually, I meant to say, I just pulled this up in front of me. I looked at this yesterday, and I meant to bring it up. There's a fighter on this card who I actually think is a really good fighter and has a bit of a future, whether or not it's world title thing. But his name's Kieran Conway. I actually really like this guy. I think I saw him fight a draw with Ted Cheeseman, and I was actually quite impressed. He is a quite a good boxer, so I'm keeping an eye on this guy, and I want to see how he does.
Yeah. I think there's quite a few prospects on there as a whole on the different cards, where it's going to be interesting to see where they go. I think one of the crossroads fights, even this early in their careers, is the on the first show, and that's Jordan Gill against Rhys Bellotti.
Yeah, Rhys Bellotti. Yeah. So that'll be an interesting one to see. Although I can't remember. See, this is the problem with getting a little bit older and having not seen anything for the last, have nothing being relevant for the last few months, is you forget when the last time these people fought were.
Yeah, I
So
think Jordan Gill's coming off a defeat, isn't he?
yeah, I was going to say I thought he was coming off a defeat, but I think these guys, if I remember rightly, I think Jordan Gill's fights mostly go the distance. I think Reece Bellotti either knocks people out or gets knocked out himself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's definitely how his career's looked so far.
So it'd be interesting to see. Yeah, be interesting to see how these this Fabio Wardley's fighting Simon Valili. I don't know this guy Simon Valili. Do you? I know
I said
Wardley's in
him.
the early things of his career.
Yeah, yeah, and he's guided by Dylan White, isn't he, Wardley?
Yes, yeah, he is actually.
Yeah,
That's the thing. It's now like heavyweights. It's become a thing to have your kind of protege. Like Fabio Wardley is obviously is is he managed by Dillian White? Is he promoted by Dillian White? Is it?
yeah. I think he's managed for him.
Yeah.
For some reason, this might be a different fighter, but I thought Bellew had something to do with Valili as well.
Yeah, I think he does. Yeah, I think he does. Although it's kind of different because Bellew's retired, but Joshua's got Akoli. He's managing Akoli, I think. If I've
Yeah,
got that right.
yeah, yeah, and I think he's got. His name's just left me now. The welterweight.
Yeah. But one thing I wanted to say about this Matchroom Fight Camp is it's going to be, for the fact that there's going to be no fans there, and the way that Eddie Hearn promotes and the way that the shows are, it's going to be they're going to be pretty good nights, right? Because they're going to do everything properly, right? Just from the way it's going to look, they're basically fighting in a back garden, right? and there's going to be all sorts of backstage stuff and everything. And I actually think it's going to be pretty good, as opposed to, again, don't want to turn this into a Warren via Hearn thing, but I mean, Frank Warren's shows that are coming up, I have paid so little interest to them, I don't even know where they're holding them.
Yeah. I think they're held on in the BT studios in Stratford in London.
So it's going to be dull and boring, and at least I don't know, an outdoor. I don't know. I just think Matchroom will do things properly, and they'll make it seem like an event rather than just a room full of no people fighting each other.
Yeah. And this morning, while we were touching on Frank Warren, they announced that both Dubois and Joyce are fighting separately. I presume that's just some kind of warm up before they eventually fight each other.
No, okay. Did they have they got opponents?
Yep. So Joe Joyce is fighting someone called Wallace, or I think that's how you pronounce his name, and Dubois is fighting PFE, whoever they are.
Okay, so just basically takeover fights.
Yeah.
So I mean, these they can't be pay-per-views, right? Surely not.
No. I wouldn't have thought so.
So again, it's just another thing people are going to just struggle to get motivated for. And I know there's the whole situation and everything, but I mean, the way Frank Warren goes on about Daniel Dubois, right? And I'm not having a go at Daniel Dubois because I actually quite like the guy, but just the way Frank Warren goes on about, oh yeah, he said he could fight for a world title now, and it's like, well, if he is world level, even his takeover fights should be against half decent opposition, right? If if this is what Frank Warren really saying and believes that Dubois could win a world title right now, right? I mean, I would say if you're world level right now, I would say as a heavyweight, if you're world level, as in good enough to beat world champions as they are today, I would say that Joe Joyce is a tune-up fight for you.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? That's what I would say. So I don't, Frank Warren, I don't know what's worse, if he really believes it or if he's just dishonest. And I don't know which is worse.
No, the guy that Dubois is fighting, he's 7-0 himself with 5 KOs, so you wouldn't even give someone that in their 4th or 5th fight, I don't think.
I understand it's difficult to get opponents during this time, but they've got to become, if they want people to tune in, and if they've got to be coming up. Like, I wouldn't care so much if Frank Warren just didn't constantly have a go at other fighters, right? If he just left it alone, if he just said, my fighter's this and my fighter's that, and didn't go on and then slag off everyone else's fighters, then fair enough. I wouldn't have such an issue with this, But what can you say about the guy?
Yeah, and I suppose I don't know, if anything, how much power he holds over Fury now. But the way he sort of, as you say, promotes Dubois, you would think he would at least put some effort into getting him a bit mainstream. Because I suppose if you asked ordinary people on the street who Daniel Dubois is, maybe 3%, 5% would tell you.
Nah, there wouldn't be a lot of people that would be able to tell you. I'll tell you that right now. Especially, I mean, I live in a different part of the country to you. In fact, you could argue that I live in a different country for you, but Scotland's not actually a country in its own right. So we live in the same country, and I could tell you right now there ain't a lot of people here that know who Daniel Dubois is, and I'm talking there ain't a lot of people that are pretty well into boxing that know who Daniel Dubois is.
No, and I suppose you could say the same for Joe Joyce, considering he's an Olympic silver medalist. He's been treated quite poorly.
Yeah. I mean, I was the only one. When the Dubois-Joyce fight was made, I was talking to people about it, and I was talking to Joe Joyce, and I'd mentioned that he had actually fought Alexander Usyk in, I think it was some kind of amateur world championships or something.
Yeah.
And they had absolutely no idea. And you're talking about, I mean, they didn't even know who Alexander Usyk was. Right. And by this time, he was the undisputed cruiserweight champion.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, so if they don't know who Alexander Usyk is, they certainly don't know who Joe Joyce is.
Yeah, and as I say, especially given the fact that we do pretty well in boxing. Well, recently we have. And as I say, silver medalist, it's quite sad that hardly no one knows who he is in a way.
Yeah, I know. It's but I guess which Olympic Games was it that he was competing at?
Rio, I believe.
So this is a thing with, those Rio must be 5-6 hours behind us, are they?
Yeah, but I think how the boxing was at the time, it was on quite a good time for us.
Yeah, my only thing was the events might have been on unsociable times for people in the UK to see it. So it's not like Joshua where you're fighting in London 2012 where everything's on during the day and you can catch it, right? So that'll maybe account for the more casual kind of fan, if you know what I mean, more on the casual side of well, I don't want to say hardcore, but on the more casual side of someone that's not, following the amateur side of the sport, right?
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's going to be certainly interesting to see. I presume Frank Warren's show that he's got coming up tomorrow, I presume that will be fairly well watched because of the lack of boxing. But when he's up against Matchroom Fight Camp, it'll be interesting to see if they're published, whose numbers are bigger.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can't imagine that there would be much dispute about that, because I mean, I'm going to turn on, if I'm not having to work late tomorrow, I'm going to turn on Frank Warren shows, and I'm going to leave it on for as long as I can possibly stand it. But that's not going to be the case for when the Matchroom fights kick off, because it's not because I'm biased towards Matchroom or whatever. I just think Matchroom and Sky do the event much better. Everything from their commentators, and especially with BT, they do it with everything. They do it with football as well. They get these really bad commentators on, and they're just so, like, just so biased, and they big things up so much. And they're BT boxing, right, is just Sky light, right? It's like diet Sky. That's how I look at it. They try and, I remember when Joshua fought Klitschko, right, at Wembley. The next fight I think BT had on, I can't remember what it was, but they just looked at everything. I remember watching it and I was just thinking, you've just looked at everything they did for the Joshua Klitschko fight, and you've just tried to recreate it, but in a dumbed down sense. And it just looked terrible. And you could see very well they were trying to copy things. And I don't think BT does itself any favors by having Steve Bunce on there.
Yeah,
And
I was going to say that.
I actually do quite like the guy, but I think his voice is only for radio. To be on radio, you have to have a certain type of, kind of personality, but it doesn't work the same for TV when you're, jumping around screaming and everything. And it's a bit cringeworthy. We can actually see it unfolding in front of your eyes.
Yeah, the other one that I can't stand on BT is that Paul Dempsey, I think his name is. Even when the football comes on and he's on commentary, I almost want to mute it.
Yeah, it's really bad. Especially the football they have, I'm just trying to think who's their football guys. Who've got Michael Owen on there, and it's just, oh Jesus, what is going on?
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, there's not, don't get me wrong, Sky have their, one or two pretty bad commentators as well. Like I'm not a huge fan of Carl Froch. I like him as a commentator, but some of the scorecards he comes out with and some of his assessments are it's almost as like he's watching different fights. And Matthew Macklin as well. I mean, that guy struggles to pronounce boxers' names.
Yeah. I think he had a pretty hard career, didn't he, boxing wise? So maybe he had one fight too many in that sense.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so back to BT, I say I'll put it on if there's, I'll put it on and watch for as long as I can stand. But when you're gonna have, you're gonna have no one there, an indoor arena with people I've never heard of, there's only going to be so long I can go for, I think.
Yeah. So speaking of the BT team, the one guy who I thought was good, who I haven't seen for a year or so on there now, and that's Steve Lillis.
Steve who, sorry?
Steve Lillis, I think his name was.
See, I'm not good with first name terms, but hold on. I'll get a picture of him here, and I'll probably know him as soon as I see him. Steve, did you say Ellis?
Lillis, I think it is.
Lillis,
Yeah. I think he was sort of more prominent on the Box Nation rather than BT, but he was on there when it first started.
Yeah, so he probably realised he was too good for BT and went away. I'm not sure. Okay, yeah. So I see the guy. So yeah, I think he was Box Nation.
Yeah.
Has Box Nation, is that still going?
Yeah, I think they've teamed up with is it Premier Sport, the channel?
Okay.
I think they're in with them now.
All right. Okay. I'll have to see. So what other news have I been missing? Has there been, are Top Rank still going strong with their American stuff?
Yeah, they've had a few more shows, but still not anyone to shout home about. I think the interesting thing with Top Rank now is going back to the start, what they do with Miller having just signed him.
Yeah, and that's going to look bad on them as well, right? Because they were, because Miller tried to get back with Matchroom, after the whole drugs thing, and Eddie Hearn knocked him back. So, Top Rank pick up the pieces. He hasn't even had a fight. Boof pops 30 for heavy steroids. So, although it won't, it's not going to really have any adverse effects to Top Rank, but it's, it's certainly not going to do them any good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to add this week, or?
I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I've seen with boxing, and I don't think so. I hope we haven't done anyone or anything an injustice by not talking about it.
No. I think we've pretty much covered everything for this week.
Yeah, as I say, just looking forward to some of these Matchroom shows to see, and I think obviously it's, they're going to try and come back with a bang, without having huge cards, right? Apart from the last one. So I think that hopefully they're going to do things properly, and they're going to make it pretty entertaining for having, outdoor fights, and you'll have all the usual suspects there, and so I'm looking forward to seeing. Is there any kind of programming on? Have they haven't announced to have any kind of pre-card show, like just showing a bit of what's gone on in the lead up?
Yeah, there was talk of Eddie Hearn saying that there's going to be sort of I don't know if you follow the UFC, but the embedded series that they do. I think they're planning to do something like that for Sky in the weeks leading up to the shows.
Yeah, okay. So it'll be quite interesting to see that, I suppose.
Yeah, and from what he said, it's going to be everything, sort of from the fights, arriving in the hotels to the fight weekend, so on and so on.
Yeah. All right, cool, man. Well, I don't think I've got anything else to gripe on about.
No. Well, hopefully we won't leave it as long next time. And thanks for joining us this week.
Yeah, no worries, mate. I'm sure there'll be plenty stuff comes out in the next week or two that's worth talking about. You never can tell. Things go quiet, and then all of a sudden something happens, i.e. a Miller drugs test fails, or a Dillian Whyte splits up with his trainer, or it's never calm for too long.
No. Well, anyway, look after yourself, and I'll speak to you again soon, mate.
Yeah, take it easy.
Yeah, thanks.
Cheers.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Thanks for joining me, and I'll get this up in the next couple of days, and I'll speak to you again soon, hopefully.
Yeah, no worries, mate.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Take care, and I'll speak to you next time.
Yeah, no worries, mate. Cheers.